Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us again today. Well, it appears that Smith & Wesson decided that Kel-Tec shouldn't be having all the fun when it comes to high-capacity 22 Magnum handguns. And with that in mind, we're going to be taking a look at the Smith & Wesson M&P 22 Magnum today. There's a lot going on with this handgun, a lot of stuff to talk about. But of course, at the end of the day, the question is going to be, is something like this going to be a good fit as a concealed carry firearm? Well, the answer might surprise you, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. Alright, once again, welcome back. Thanks for being with us today. If this is your first time coming to the channel, or if you've been watching our videos and you just haven't had the chance to do so before now and you like our content, please consider subscribing. You can locate that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your computer screen there. Or if you're on a mobile device, you can just scroll down below the video and hit subscribe that way. It's a simple thing that helps us out a whole lot, and we really appreciate it. So, M&P 22 Magnum. Now, many of you may be already familiar with the Kel-Tec PMR 30. And this is a gun that I've reviewed, and this is a gun I've actually carried, the Kel-Tec. And it's a little much for me as far as size, and I can see the idea behind it, because with a gun like this, the idea of having 30 rounds of ammunition, you know, which is what these magazines hold, 30 rounds of 22 Magnum. I like the 22 Magnum cartridge. I've spent a lot of time shooting it, especially out of rifles, and I do like it. I'm just not really sure how I feel about, you know, the size that you get when you have something like this as far as concealed. But we're going to talk about all that, but let's do our traditional little size comparison here, because a lot of people don't think they realize what they're looking at when it comes to this size handgun. About the largest handgun I ever would catch myself carrying is a Glock 17, and you can see how it compares to a Glock 17. You know, it's about the same size. You know, the beefiness of the grip and such. Actually, it's a little bit bigger, and it's a little bit longer, and of course, it's a little bit narrower than the Glock in places. So obviously, you're not going to have any complete matches as far as size. It's a very unique handgun, but if you've carried a Glock 17, you know that it's not a simple thing to carry a Glock 17. It's a big handgun. It's a lot of weight and it's a lot of bulk, and even with a really good holster, it can be difficult to hide that thing. So keep in mind, it's a cool concept, and I do like it. I think that it's a good handgun. But just get your perspective there on how large it is, because obviously you're going to have to manage this inside the waistband or some other way if you're going to carry it. Alright, we're going to jump right into the features here, but before we do, we're going to take just a moment to thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of the M&P 22 Magnum for our tabletop review today. Don's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearm safety and education, and we can't thank them enough. So, we're going to do this the way we normally do, kind of a top-down review, but we're going to do a quick safety check as usual. Let you see that magazine is empty, and then we will show you that the weapon is clear. There's nothing in the chamber, so we are as just safe as we can be. So we'll kind of start with what I had in my hand there. It's the magazine. So this does hold 30 rounds of 22 Magnum, and if you're familiar with the Kel-Tec PMR 30, well, that's the exact same thing. A lot of people really like the idea of having a really high capacity pistol, and 22 Magnum is a pretty capable round. I've shot a lot of it. I don't think I would make it my carry caliber, just because the few guns I've seen in 22 Magnum that are available, you know, they're all very unique, and to me it's almost too specialized for me to rely on that as my carry gun. And that may change in time, you know, as we have more options, if we get more options. But I think it's interesting, it's fun to shoot. I'm just not so sure it'd be my carry choice. But moving right along here, you got your fiber optic front sight, and you've got your black notch sight in the rear. You can see that shows up really well. I like the fiber optic sight. That's a good minimum, I think, for a handgun. Optics mounting plate, if you've got something that uses the RMSC footprint, you know, a little Wesson K or something like that, that'll work on there. I typically don't use optics on my carry guns because they just add bulk, but it will do it. We'll talk about that in the range section too, because there's going to be a relationship between your optic and your ammo and your performance, at least in some cases. You've got serrations on the rear, nothing on the front, but to me this is perfectly fine. This is a very easy handgun to manipulate. You want to talk about smooth to pull that slide back. It is just really, really nice. So I don't think there's going to be any complaints from anyone on that. So you have your slide lock, as you just saw, which is ambidextrous. And you have your frame safety here, which is also ambidextrous. So lefties and righties can share that alike. Accessory rail for your lights and lasers, if that's your thing. Trigger guard's kind of small to me. You'll hear me say that on any gun that doesn't have a larger trigger guard, just because I got long fingers and I like my finger to kind of be able to get in there from where it's indexed. I like to be closer so I can just drop it in there. And yeah, I'm kind of splitting hairs. That's just me. I like that design. The trigger is not bad. I'll talk more about the trigger in the range section, but the trigger is pretty nice. This gun in general, if you've seen the Smith, the M&P 5.7 by Smith & Wesson, you'll be like, you know what? This gun looks just like it. And there's a reason for that. Aside from the changes specific to the caliber and some other minor things, they're very, very close, and you can see that yourself if you take a look. So magazine release, I think it's in a good location. It's effective. It doesn't get in my way no matter how I grip the gun, so I don't feel like I'm accidentally going to hit it, and that's what I look for in a magazine release. It's a nice fat grip. Well, of course, that grip is being driven by one thing, and that's this. Okay, that big magazine. Of course, you get two of these with the firearm. But obviously, to wrap the grip around all of this, it's going to be kind of big and kind of beefy. If you had really small hands, this might not be for you, because you can't make this grip any smaller. You know, this is what you get. And of course, it's because of the size of the magazine. But I think it's a nice featured. It looks nice. I thought they'd done a good job on the 5.7, and I think they've made this one look pretty good as well. So it's not a bad little handgun. You're talking about 22 Magnum cartridge being shot out of this is a 4.35 inch barrel, and you still get pretty good performance as far as the round in that small barrel. And as I said, I am a fan of the 22 Magnum cartridge. I'm just not entirely sure I'd carry it, as my carry gun. But it is a very good gun. It's very well equipped, and I think that it's got features that make sense. So talking about the range, as you might have expected, it's a pretty good shooting gun, just like the Kel-Tec. The Kel-Tec, of course, is a different feel, and the triggers definitely feel different on those two guns. But I wanted to start off with that and just show you that I was talking earlier about the trigger. So you've got this little, trigger safety here that you engage. Once you get it, you've got kind of a little gritty area right there, and then that's a good snap. And then there's your reset. Then once again, you see we're just got a small little bit of travel, and then the reset is pretty small. So if you like the feel of kind of a tight trigger with not a whole lot of travel, you might like this, because the trigger actually feels pretty good. It's really crisp. There's no mushy area in this trigger. There's no there's no long area of travel before you get into the break. I mean, from the time you take this small tiny area up, the trigger is going to go off right then. So it's very tight, and like I say, it's a good shooting gun. Now, depending on who you ask, you will get people that will talk to you about this gun and warn you about problems with cycling the slide when using an optic. So, full disclosure, I didn't shoot this with an optic, so I can't tell you whether that's going to happen or not. I generally don't put optics, on my carry guns that I test. If it already comes with one, I'll go ahead and do it. But I didn't test this with an optic. But every type of ammo, everything from the very cheapest, I have several varieties of Federal. Then you got your little golden bullet, and then you've got your, of course, the CCI. And every round that I tried seemed to be just fine. Obviously, some have better performance than others, but there wasn't any issues with the gun actually cycling the ammunition. But like I said, there are some bits of information out there where some other people have claimed that if you have certain kinds of ammo, I guess I know that personally, when it comes to just regular 22, I have a couple of guns that don't cycle the slides on some of the cheaper 22. So that's what some of the people were saying about this in 22 Magnum. When it has an optic, some of the, I guess, less powerful loads don't always cycle the slide on this handgun. But for the sake of this review and this conversation, I didn't test it that way, so I don't have anything to report on that specifically. It's just something that you should go research, I think. If you're thinking about using this gun with an optic, I think it's fair that you know that. But it was perfectly reliable, and it's very accurate. 22 Magnum, like I say, it's a great cartridge. It's a lot of fun. And out of a 4.35 inch barrel, it's surprisingly accurate even at long distances. So I'm not sure whether this would be, my perfect scenario for a carry gun, but it's certainly a lot of fun. It's fun to shoot, and of course it's very noisy. If you haven't ever shot the 22 Magnum, be prepared when you do, because it definitely lets you know that it's there. So what's it like to carry the M&P 22 Magnum as a carry gun? Well, for me, it's not really an issue of weight, because even with 30 rounds of 22 Magnum, this doesn't weigh as much as some of my other smaller guns, but it definitely has the bulk. I actually have a colleague that carries the PMR 30, the Kel-Tec, as a carry gun all the time, and they carry it inside of a sticky holster of all things, and they're comfortable with that, and they do it all the time. This is, to me, once again, way too big for me to carry that way, so for the purposes of testing, I just used a generic. I don't have a holster that's specific to this gun, so I used a larger Galco holster that fits some larger, 8-9-inch barreled guns, or slide rather, 8-9-inch slide handguns like this, and it's an outside the waistband holster, and it was pretty comfortable. I didn't have any issues. I'm just emphasizing size is really something that I can't stress enough, because a lot of people are looking for information for carry guns, and they look at the features and they say, man, that's a cool gun, I like the cartridge. And think about that, you've got 30 rounds, and don't forget what you're carrying when you do that. Okay, this firearm is pretty big. You can see it next to a Glock 17. This is not a small gun. So you really want to make sure that that's what you want, that you're going to be happy with that. From a weight standpoint, I think you'd be totally comfortable carrying this. And if you had a really good holster, and I think if you had a really secure feeling holster and a good way to cover it up, your longer outer clothing, things like that, I think you'd be okay. But this is definitely something that's a little bit too big for me to carry, and it definitely... this is more of a target, training. It could even be a home defense gun, as capable as 22 Magnum is, but it's not really exactly what I would call a carry gun. Overall impressions of the M&P 22 Magnum. Well, as I said a couple of times, I think a gun like this has a purpose. I think it's fun. And most of us who have firearms in our collection that use them for more than just one thing. You've got different tools in your toolbox, and you have some guns that you probably own just for fun. To me, that's what this would be. This is a gun that would be fun just to go out and shoot. It's just something I have available to me to go play with. It's very specialized, okay? And of course, the 22 Magnum cartridge, there's just not a lot of guns, especially, handguns, that shoot the 22 Magnum cartridge, not compared to just about every other cartridge that's available. And I don't like having something that specialized to be my carry gun. Plus, once again, the bulk of this is really way more than what I would like. Now, I know people who carry guns this size, and like I say, I have a colleague that carries the Kel-Tec, PMR 30, which is the same kind of idea, and they love it. And you might love it too, especially if you've already carried, say, the Kel-Tec PMR 30 or something like it, and you're comfortable with that type of gun. For me, it's always going to come down to getting the most handgun in the smallest footprint, and I've got so many ways to do that and still have an adequate amount of defensive capability. You know, and it's not cheap. The MSRP on this thing is around $650. So for a specialty kind of gimmicky handgun, it's not exactly cheap either. So those are all things that you got to think about. But as far as reliability, it's great. The design seems to be okay. You know, it's early in the release of this gun, so we'll have to kind of wait and see what happens. But if you want something that's new and cool and kind of different, and you like the 22 Magnum cartridge, I think you'd enjoy shooting this. I just think it's a little much for a carry gun, and that's just my opinion. But it's definitely reliable, so you don't have to worry about that. All right. Well, that is going to do it for today. As always, we appreciate you joining us today. We'll be back soon with another video for you. So as always, everyone, please stay safe and have a great day. Thank you.